E3 2018. Everyone remembers how this went.
We both know why you're here. The next Fallout.
A few things set people off immediately.
Fallout 76 is entirely online.
Now, the fans, I think, want to know about mods in an online environment.
Sure, definitely committed to that, just won't be at launch.
But it wouldn't be until months later, after the game's release, that things really started rolling. There was an avalanche of samey reviews by the most hyperbolic people on the planet. The gameplay, the glitches, the story, the microtransactions, the merchandise. Everything went wrong so perfectly. And for years, it wiped any slate of goodwill attributed to Bethesda. The funny thing about this...
You kept playing it.
And a lot of the players stuck around.
One of the most played games on Xbox.
One, because it's a Fallout game and they like Bethesda games, Studios games anyway, but they knew that we were onto something.
I think we're onto it now. Yep. I think it's there.
Yeah, we put a battle royale in Fallout 76.
Call it brand power. Blame it on the superficial content updates. Maybe it's some dark ritual Todd himself casted into the ether. Regardless, one thing has remained consistent throughout development. Under the nose of developers and below the eye line of the average game reviewer. The true endgame surrounding Fallout 76. Harkening back to the game's predecessor, Fallout 4, a generally well-received open-world Skinner's box, it's clear what direction Bethesda was taking the series. The legendary system comes to mind. There's over 80 unique effects for weapons and armor. The consensus was that about 5 of them were actually cool. But there are 2 effects that mark something interesting. Two-Shot doubles the unperked base damage of the weapon and adds a second projectile. Explosive adds up to 32.5 additional damage to any gun. It adds area of effect damage, it adds bonus crippling. And for shotguns, this applies to every single pellet. These weren't just overpowered, they were like licenses to breeze through the game on any difficulty. So naturally, they were added to 76. Only in Fallout 76, weapons can hold 3 legendary effects simultaneously. In the backlog of now defunct trading posts on various sites, one of the most common items is specifically the 2-shot explosive 90% reduced weight pump-action shotgun. It's a specific role because it was mass duplicated by players, gliding along a string of constant exploits.
Because of the dupers, almost everyone has it.
My friend duped millions of them.
Most of the perceived issues the game houses can be represented in some way by this particular gun.
Boss enemies do not exist when you have this weapon.
It's oversight, it's over-ambition, and it's part of the reason people stuck around. It's basically the birthplace of the in-game market, along with a few other forgettable items. What else were caps for? Today, these are totally worthless. Following an in-demand update circa 2019, Bethesda reduced the enormous 100% damage amplifications of explosive and 2-shots to plus 20%. There was supposed to be more to it than that. Bethesda nudged players both in its promotional material and its main questline to infiltrate one of 3 nuclear silos, to nuke Fisher Site Prime, and to kill the Scorchbeast Queen. Today, she struggles to stay alive for a minute. On launch, a stacked server could fail at taking her down at all. That's why the primary target was White Springs, which infinitely spawned bloated glowing ones, which can be further simplified to XP pinatas, although that's probably cutting them short. The place was notorious for dropping batches of legendaries. It doesn't resemble that anymore. Now it's occupied by a faction of cardboard NPCs called the Responders. In a way, it feels like Bethesda used them at scale as an exit strategy for the human experiment they marketed the game as.
Every person and character is real. The other players, they are the interesting NPCs.
But that's just speculation. There are a few infamous locations like this. Fort Defiance has a extremely marginal chance of spawning up to 3 asylum dresses out of a roster of 10 colors. The red one, at its peak, was valued at well over 1 million caps.
I know a whole bunch of people that have traded, the best guns in the game for an Asylum Red dress, like, recently.
Which translates well into the RMT market. Fairly recently, however, the public test server hinted at adding them into mutated party packs, which has the potential to substantially increase their drop rates. This scorched its long-term trade value for many, as if the thousands of dupes in circulation didn't already de-rarify them.
Officially worthless now because there's going to be 17 quadrillion of them.
That doesn't really stop people from server hopping Fort Defiance and metagaming their process. The Red Asylum belongs to a special subset of ultra-rare outfits, most of which are just asset rips from Fallout 4. The way they're implemented paints them like oversights. They're so insignificant. Bethesda never even directly promoted them, and yet they're a big deal.
Kind of thing that people will forget they have.
Yeah, that thing's fucking ugly.
It's a rare thing though.
A lot gets extrapolated from these drop rates. They're strange status symbols.
It's a big flex that you can go out there and be able to show it off, and, that was cool.
These didn't really come into their own until the post-launch year, critically because no one knew about them. That's about the era when a particular legendary effect finally garnered some appreciation. Fallout 4 had a lot of duds when it came to legendary effects. Bloodied was one of them. Bloodied does more damage the lower your health is, all the way up to 95%. But having dethroned the powerhouse of two-shot explosive, players were still hungry for ludicrous amounts of damage and trails of dead mobs. 95% is a substantial increase. Bloodied also paired nicely with unyielding armor and the mutation serum adrenal reaction. Junkies, quad, anti-armor all started gaining traction. If any era of the game could be labeled a renaissance, this was it. And the vast majority of it can be attributed to player response.
You're gonna have to fix your builds now and not place perk points in irrelevant perks.
Just get a couple of your buddies to all run the same build like this. Laughable how much damage you guys are doing.
It was around then that Rage Chronicles would coin the term food build.
Food build?
Which means roughly someone that equips quality of life perks rather than perks with a defensive or offensive stat boost.
In no way, shape, or form is Good with Salt gonna save your life.
Rage Chronicles is known for his stint in the game's PvP, something that's been increasingly vestigial as content updates shear away what little was even there initially. Perplexingly, this made for observable developments to its meta. And like every other system, its life support seems to hinge on these developments. It's only become more complex and more obfuscated from the majority of the player base. A good PvP setup generally looks something like this. A player would probably want to choose one of 3 weapon archetypes: fire, cryo, or poison, since they're all pretty obscure forms of damage and require special investment to protect against. They want a sufficient supply of Nuka-Cola Quantums,
you're gonna be spamming colas,
and the perk Born Survivor to stay alive. A set of mutations, stacks of them if they want to negate their stat penalties, and a full set of
Sentinel, Assassin, armor in general could use a nerf. Like, it's just so OP.
Bobbleheads, magazines, almost every offensive and defensive perk card that pertains to the weapon. And through all this preparation, the results often look like 5-minute staring contests. There's other tactics employed here: armor stacking, stealth cracking, pulse grenades, hacked weapons, all at varying levels of acceptability in these circles. Another big thing was legacies. And until their temporary removal in 2023 and eventual rebalance in 2024, they annihilated every sector of the game. Energy weapons weren't really hit big by the explosive nerf, they just couldn't spawn with the effect anymore. Every existing copy stayed the exact same, the nerf didn't apply to them retroactively. Thus, the legacy meta. It wasn't the peak of destruction at launch, but it was still game-breaking. To many, it was an anchor. It was something to look forward to. Trading up to one of these was a staple. Some of the best items in the game were treated like stepping stones. All legacies were valuable to some extent, but the explosive pepper shaker was so valuable that
you could, buy a car if it had an explosive effect on.
serious money. It's like a little mini industry. And taking in some of the alleged numbers in the RMT trade, it definitely tried to be one.
Stupid amounts of real money.
The modern edition of Legendary Effect box mods quashed most of this though. If everyone's gonna special, no one's is. The game is filled to the brim with these kinds of metagames though. They're just cyclic in their operations. Even down to the ritualistic behavior of low health builds, getting the health points in just the right spot for maximum benefit. It's magic. The quad 50 crit 25 less action points railway rifle was for quite some time the most prolific and sought after god roll in the game. It stood alongside the quad explosive 25 less action points radium rifle, a weapon that wasn't highly duped, and the 2-shot 50 crit 25 less action points alien blaster with the cryo mag. Only it wasn't gimmicky. It was brute force damage, and it had really dumb synergy with VATS. It went for about $150 at one point. It's a weapon used to solo world bosses. The people that used it, and other boss-killing weapons, could decimate Earl Williams, the Scorch Beast Queen, and the Ultra Sight Titan in seconds, with the right setup. 90% of the integral gameplay takes place before they aggro the boss, taking the right buffs in the right order and all of the build-up obtaining the items. The mundane time between is what's important here. New players waste no time in trudging through the most inefficient methods of farming caps, ammo, weapons, camp items, flux serums, and anything else of perceived value. Experienced players tend to accumulate these items
about 10,000 of each serum for like 8 caps each. Stupid amount of treasure maps.
Through trails of gray market connections, and despite Bethesda's pretty successful attempt at monetizing resource storage, can hoard their collections on several mule characters.
Spend a little bit of time on places you can get 6 degrees away from the shady dupers.
It's like some third world guy.
I mean, I don't buy anything. I met the right people at the right time.
Vendor hopping is something a little more ubiquitous. Player vending machines were added in the Wild Appalachia update, and over 48 billion caps passed through them in 2020 alone. Scoring deals is like its own game.
It will be more fun than the game itself.
There are certain things that just stick out, like some primal instinct. For a while, you looked out for underappreciated god rolls that should really be trade only. You looked for ultra rare apparel, you looked for meta Kims sold for half of what they're actually worth, and you looked for duplicate treasure maps sold in bulk. To many, the way these transactions mix into the jungle of ancillary markets is more real than taking down trash mobs or tying up loose quests. It's just a lot more concrete. It's one of those concepts that seems more substantive. Like the rest of the game is just set dressing to player ambitions. Player camps offer a similar relief, and obviously it's where vendor transactions take place. It's also another system that foundationally existed in Fallout 4. However, the more interesting and honestly captivating aspect of this inheritance is how reliant it is on exploits to function. Nasty Bones, Jug, and many others managed to make some of the best looking settlements. They blended together so naturally with the vanilla game. Others relied on mods to make theirs stand out and easily circumvent the engine limitations. There's a certain level of artistry in doing it straight, though. Players have to rely on glitches like the rug glitch, the pillar glitch, and the wire glitch to make anything exceptional. Every little change is a process. That's part of what gives the building community in 76 its color. There's a high barrier to entry in making things that look cool. Getting camp items on shelves isn't a feature, but merging makes it possible. Breaking items with the flamethrower trap allows items to collide when usually they wouldn't. Without any kind of mod support, as generally lame as that is, it makes camps that stand out. Fosnod is arguably one of the most integral updates to the game. It happens yearly and pretty often outnumbers Helvetia's real population. Ultimately, it's a walking simulator event where not a lot happens. At the end, you have a chance of either getting a worthless mask or one that's rare and valuable. These masks are at minimum worth 40,000 caps, so people run auto hotkeys overnight, letting others complete the event for them.
So many people are AFKing, and you can see it because they're just respawning here,
maximizing their odds of obtaining one of the new and sought-after masks. It's yet another pointless obsession. 76's Endgame is really just people building their own systems. All of these micro adjustments, every exploit, every third-party transaction. They're more a part of the game than the core game itself. Polygon put it best some time ago, suggesting that Bethesda should just give the players the tools they need for fun and get out of their way. Bethesda never really budged, though.